how are you? It's been a while since I read my last English story, so I'm ready with a new one. I don't know how the weather is where you live, but here in Romania it's really cold, so the best thing you can do is stay indoors and do something you like. Therefore, I don't know anything better than listening to a new story that I prepared for you. So if you agree, take a very warm, comfy blanket, get under it, stay comfy and listen to my next story. If you're ready, today I want to read to you the story of JoJo, the Melon Donkey, a beautiful, gorgeous story about a donkey from Venice. It was written by Michael Morpurgo, illustrated by Helen, and the publisher is Egmont. If you're ready, I should start reading it. JoJo, my dear ones, was a donkey, like I said. His father had been a donkey before him and his mother as well. JoJo had to be a donkey whether he liked it or not. And he did not like it. Not one bit. Why, you might ask? Well, because work began early for JoJo. First, his master would load him with so many melons that he could hardly walk. Poor JoJo. Then he would lead him out of the village and down the dusty road towards the great city of Venice. Have you ever been to Venice? I love it. It's such a beautiful city. JoJo loved Venice. He loved the canals and the bridges and the sound of the church bells ringing out over the rooftops. All day long, his master would haul him down the footpaths that ran alongside the canals, and JoJo would call out, "Melons! Melons for sale!" Everyone would know it was JoJo and come running with their money. And all the while the flies came and would not go away. Only in the cool of the evening, resting under his olive tree, where there were no flies to bother him and no master to bully him, could JoJo be at peace. It seems like poor JoJo had a very difficult life. Let's see what happens next. One misty sunrise, his master woke him as usual. "Up, up, you old ragbag!" he shouted. "No more back streets for me! I've heard they'll pay double for melons in St. Mark's Square. Even the Doge, the ruler of Venice himself, might buy one of my melons." The load was even heavier that morning, but JoJo didn't mind. He had a feeling inside him that something good was about to happen. I like it when something good happens in stories, don't you? By the time they reached St. Mark's Square, it was already full of people. "Don't know why I never thought of this before," said his master, unloading the melons. "We'll sell them in no time. Sing out, you old ragbag, you!" "Melons! Melons for sale!" JoJo brayed and his cry rang around the square. Everyone in St. Mark's Square stopped and turned and looked. And then one of them began to laugh, and then another and another, until the entire square was filled with laughter. "What are you looking at?" asked JoJo's master. "Above your head!" they cried. Behind them stood the 4 golden horses of Venice, the 4 most beautiful horses in all the world. "Beauty and the Beast!" roared the crowd. JoJo hung his head in shame. Poor JoJo. Look, here are the 4 golden horses, and here's poor JoJo. How do you think he feels? He doesn't feel very appreciated, does he? Did that ever happen to you? Did you ever feel compared to somebody else and then feel inferior? I bet that happened to you, and I know how it feels. Let's see what happens next. All morning the people came to point and stare, but they bought no melons. Then, as noon chimed, the great doors of the Doge's palace opened and a little girl ran out into the square, a nurse bustling after her. I wonder who this little girl is. Come back, the nurse cried. But I want a melon, said the little girl. And anyway, I don't like being cooped up in that palace all day. I've got no friends to play with, and I'm bored. It's the Doge's daughter, someone whispered, and soon everyone was there, bowing and curtsying as she passed. She ignored them all and made straight for the pile of melons beside JoJo. Here's the nanny, and here's the little girl with the little melon. How much do you want for one of your melons? She asked JoJo's master. For your highness, it's a gift. I have the best melons in all of Venice, he said. Thank you, said the Doge's daughter. Then she noticed JoJo standing beside his master. He has such sad, kind eyes, she said, and she reached out and stroked JoJo on his neck. JoJo had never been patted in all his life, and his knees weakened with joy. He loved being patted. Really, Your Highness, said the nurse. Can't you see there are flies all over him? Come along back to the palace before your father sees you. And she hustled the little girl away. JoJo closed his eyes and held the picture of the little girl in his mind so that it would never go away. Within a few minutes, all the melons were sold. Wow! Anyone in St. Mark's Square was eating melons. What was good enough for the Doge's daughter was definitely good enough for them. So every day that summer, JoJo came to St. Mark's Square loaded with melons and stood under the 4 golden horses in front of the cathedral. And every day, the Doge's daughter came at noon for her melon. She would always talk gently to him and smooth his nose before she left. How kind of her, wasn't it? One afternoon, JoJo was gazing up at the 4 shining golden horses, as he often did. Oh, why can't I be like you? He cried. His master woke up from his snoring sleep. How dare you wake me up like that? He roared. No use talking to those horses. Statues can't hear. But JoJo knew they could. The very next morning, the great Doge came to the window of his palace. Trumpets sounded and a crowd gathered. Toot-toot-toot-toot! Be it known to one and all, said the Doge, that I intend to purchase the finest horse in the city for my daughter's birthday. The horse will be chosen at noon this very day. JoJo stood and watched the horses arriving in the square. Every one of them was finer than the one before, and every one made him feel smaller and uglier than ever. Poor JoJo. As the noon bell sounded, the great Doge came out into the square with his daughter, and the grand parade began. My daughter is 10 years old today, he said, so she is quite old enough to choose for herself. He turned to his daughter. Now, my child, which one would you like? The Doge's daughter walked slowly along the line, and then, at last, she turned away and pointed. Over there, she said, pointing towards the 4 golden horses. Oops. You can't have the golden horses, said the Doge. They belong to the people of Venice. Not them, the Doge's daughter said. I want that one over there, the one that's standing by the melons, father. The crowd gasped. But that's a donkey, the Doge cried. Yes, father, said the Doge's daughter. The daughter wanted JoJo. Let's see how the father reacts. I forbid it, said the Doge. I absolutely forbid it. I cannot have a daughter of mine riding around on some flea-bitten donkey. I don't want to ride around on him, said the Doge's daughter. I want him to be my friend. He was very upset, the Doge. Don't argue with me, thundered the Doge. You could have picked the finest horse in the land, and you chose that walking carpet. Look at him, and his feet curled up like Turkish slippers. Father, said the Doge's daughter, her eyes filling with tears, if I cannot have the donkey, then I don't want anything. All right, said the Doge. If that's what you want, then you will go without a present. Go back into the palace and go to your room at once. The father was really upset. But the Doge's daughter ran to where JoJo stood and put her arms around his neck. Come to the palace tonight, she whispered, and wait outside my window. We shall run away together. Be there, JoJo. She had a plan. Not necessarily the best plan. It's not good to run away from home, is it? But let's see what happens. For the first time in his life, JoJo was proud he was a donkey. Don't go getting any grand ideas inside that ugly head of yours, his master said. You're just a donkey, and don't forget it. Once a donkey, always a donkey. Do you hear me? JoJo heard him, but he was not listening. He was making plans. In the black of the night, JoJo bit through the rope that tied him to his olive tree and made his way carefully back into Venice. It was a wild, wet and windy night. No one heard JoJo hurrying through the empty streets, trotting over the little bridges toward the Doge's palace. And then he heard the voices. At first, he thought it must have been the wind whistling through the towers and spires of the city, but then he looked up. The 4 golden horses spoke as one. Little donkey, they said, listen to us. Little donkey, the sea is coming in. You must wake the people and warn them. Tell them to leave. They will drown if you do not save them. Hurry, little donkey, hurry, said the 4 golden horses. JoJo galloped around the square until he reached the water's edge. He could hear the waves rolling in towards him from the sea. He felt the water washing over his hoofs and saw it running down over the stones and into the square behind him. He lifted his head, took the deepest breath of his life, and then he brayed and he brayed until his head ached with it. The Doge's daughter was waiting for JoJo. "Not so loud, JoJo," she said. "You'll wake up everyone." And then she too heard the distant roar of the sea and heard the waves rolling in. She felt the water around her ankles and understood why JoJo was braying. She knew at once what had to be done. With the Doge's daughter on his back, JoJo trotted braying through the city's streets, waking everyone up. "What?" they shouted, opening their windows. "Melons at this time of night!" "No, no!" cried the Doge's daughter. "The sea has broken in and the city's underwater!" And all the while the sea came in, flooding the square and the cathedral and the Doge's palace itself. Woken by JoJo's braying, the people of Venice ran for their lives. JoJo, the Melon Donkey with the Doge's daughter on his back, guided the children and the old people to safety down the flooding streets. That was very brave of JoJo, wasn't it? And all the time the waters rose round them. Houses crumbled and the great bell tower in the square came crashing down into the water. When morning came, they discovered that not a single life had been lost. JoJo, the Melon Donkey, had saved the people of Venice and they loved him for it. It was the people who asked the Doge to put up a statue, a golden statue of the Melon Donkey. It should stand, they said, in St. Mark's Square, in front of the golden horses themselves, so that no one should ever forget him. Oh, that was so beautiful and so nice of them, wasn't it? At the unveiling ceremony, the Doge placed a laurel on JoJo's head and apologized for the cruel things he had said about him. That's nice. There is a legend, the Doge said, that if ever the people of Venice were in danger, the 4 golden horses would save them. It's a nice story, but it's just a story. It was JoJo the Melon Donkey who saved us, and we must never forget it, he said. And JoJo smiled secretly inside himself and was happy. Finally, JoJo's happy. Never again was JoJo made to carry anything except, that is, for the garlands of flowers that people put around his neck whenever he went out for a walk. For he became the Doge's daughter's donkey, and he was her friend and constant companion for the rest of his life. And donkeys do live for donkey's ears, you know. Wasn't this a beautiful story, kids? I enjoyed it so much, and I remember still when I found this book in Venice and I picked it up, I opened it and I loved the illustrations and the story that I just read in a few minutes, and I needed to buy it. So I got it home and I thought that maybe you would enjoy it as much as I did. It's a beautiful story about a little donkey who had magical powers, didn't he? His courage was a magical power. The fact that he didn't give up, even though he kept comparing himself to other donkeys or horses maybe, he still went on doing his job and he found someone to love him because he was good. So what do we learn from this story, my darlings? That if you're good, good comes around, right? If you're mean, then not so good things come around, because you saw that his master was nasty to him, right? And his master was left without a donkey by the end of the story. Now, you also learn, if you want, that when you make mistakes, it's very important to apologize. For example, the Doge who realized that his daughter had picked JoJo for a very good reason, then he actually realized how courageous, how brave JoJo was, and he apologized in front of everybody, made him a statue and gave him a garland, right? So it's good to know that too. When you make mistakes, say I'm sorry. And if someone else says I'm sorry to you, say okay, I forgive you. Make up, right? And then be good friends again, because sometimes it's normal to quarrel or to have arguments with your friends, but it's also very, very good to make up with your friends, right? So, what do we learn from this story? What are you left with? What's your favorite part of the story? Think about that and learn from JoJo. Learn whatever suits you the best. That maybe you have to be brave, that maybe it's not good to compare yourself with others, that maybe it doesn't really matter how you look as long as you're a good person, right? Because when you do good, good comes back to you. And with that, my darlings, I shall leave you and I'll see you next time. Bye, kids! Have a great day!